Hello, comrades. Today's story, Beyond the Wall of Sleep, begins with a doctor in a mental institution talking about dreams. A lot of authors we've talked about before, even H.P. Lovecraft himself, have talked a lot about dreams. I think it's very understandable. Dreams serve both as an inspiration in themselves. You might dream about something and then write a story about it, but it's also something you really have to think about, you really have to meditate about in terms of trying to grapple with some questions of what is human creativity, what is consciousness, that kind of a thing. And so this doctor, he's talking about dreams, and he thinks that maybe a dream is something more. We have these vague memories, and so we think it's less real, but he's left with the question of what if it is more real? And so this is when another character enters the story, a man from the Catskills in rural New York in the mountains. By the way, H.P. Lovecraft is incredibly racist, and it hasn't quite come up yet. But this is one of the first instances where it's like, yeah, this is a lot of prejudice, where he's just describing this guy and just like the worst. And so he's a white guy from a rural area, from the mountains in New York State, but think of like the worst description you could have you've ever heard of someone from like rural West Virginia, and make it just like a little bit worse, like just that level of prejudice. That's kind of how he feels about his fellow man. So he's describing this man on just kind of the worst terms, but is a very free mountain folk kind of character, and describes him as very uneducated, but how he has dreams, and when he wakes up for an hour, he has these horrible visions, and he's trying to talk to people and explain it, but he can't really, and then he just kind of returns to normal. Eventually, in one of these states, in this kind of post-dream psychosis, he kills someone, he kind of snaps out of it, realizing he killed someone, runs away, they arrest him. And so they're examining him, and they find him not guilty by reason of insanity. So basically, they don't send him to prison, but they do send him to a mental institution, which in all likelihood at the time was probably much worse. And that's where the doctor meets him. And so the doctor is really interested in dreams, and so he thinks there might be something there, and that maybe this guy just doesn't have the words to really express it. And so he has a device that he kind of played with some and worked with, but didn't quite get to work, that allows kind of the direct transmission of thought. So he's thinking, thought is maybe kind of a wave, kind of an energy pattern, and words are kind of a symbolic necessity, but ultimately imperfect. And maybe this tool would allow for direct transfer of thought. And so eventually his patient's dying. And so the doctor knows his patient is dying. And so he, what does he have to lose? He puts on this device that would allow for the direct transfer of thought. And he finds something, a spirit of soul from kind of another realm, a dream realm, who describes his life going from place to place and time to time. He talks about being one of the insect philosophers of the fourth moon of Jupiter, various alien planets. He talks about going to ancient Egypt, and in the long future, he knows things in the future that won't happen. So he's this interdimensional time-traveling being, and he describes being stuck in this man from, the mountains of New York as his diurnal prison, his day prison. And so he might be kind of the soul of this man who's really fundamentally unhappy in a way he can't know. And when he dreams, he's let free and he's cast back into this body. And so, I don't know, I think about my death a lot, maybe to an unhealthy degree. I think about death in general, and I remember one time I was talking to someone who believes in reincarnation. And I said, I don't get it. You say I have a soul, and that when I die, I'll be reincarnated as someone else. But that person will have different memories, they'll have different life experiences, they'll have different brain chemistry. And so if I live on and I don't remember who I am, and I am a different person, I have a different personality, I have different interests, different everything, really, in what sense am I the same? What is the thing that's maintained? So he looked at me, said, he wasn't really sure. Respectable answer. I always respect people who admit they aren't sure about something. And he said, that thing, that part of you that doesn't want to die, though, that's going to be worm food. The part of you that wants to live, the part of me I think of as me, is going to be in the ground. It's going to die. It's going to rot away. So we're just going to be left with this thing. It's going to have some other consciousness beyond my comprehension. It's going to go out and it's going to live on and do other things. But what if it's really unhappy, you know? What if my life is terrible? My life is a horrible prison for my soul. And I don't even know. You know, I'm here, I'm living life, I'm reading books, I'm talking to people, I'm doing everything, you know, working, doing all of that stuff, making YouTube videos. I think my life is fine, I'm pretty happy in general. But what if there is some thing within me? You know, some greater spirit that is deeply dissatisfied, trapped in this great galactic, not even galactic, universal battle. They describe this battle with enemies kind of incomprehensible. You know, that's the thing that happens when having this telepathic exchange. These two people, the soul of this man, the light spirit of the patient talks to the doctor and says, I know you, you know, you're the only person, my only friend on this planet, and we've known each other, and like, and you're free in our dreams, but like, we can't make a connection between the dream world, the light world, and the waking world. They said, look for me in the night sky, you know, where I will be fighting the demon star, and I will be the enemy. So the doctor ends his quote talking about how obviously no one believes him about any of this, but he said, you know, if I have any evidence, let it be this. And he quotes an astronomical observation of this bright star that appeared in the same place in the sky that they were talking about, and then disappeared days later. And so what if I'm trapped in some kind of interdimensional battle, struggling to get free, completely unaware of it? One of the other things, you know, I always think about with this kind of a thing is there have been studies where they cut off the corpus callosum. It's the main connection between the two hemispheres of the brain, and then they can kind of test things to see how, like, different hemispheres react, because they're still connected, just there's a slower connection. And so I haven't looked into this. I should look into this more. But supposedly, you know, you can get someone to who's had this operation done, where they've cut off the corpus callosum. You ask them, you know, if God is real, and they have different answers depending on the hemisphere. And you know, there are all kinds of interpretations into this, because you know, you can't have someone who believes in God and doesn't believe in God. So what happens to you? Like, you know, you ask them, and then they say something, and then they have to make up some kind of explanation for it post hoc. Is it like this part of them actually believe, this part of them not believe? Or maybe there is some kind of alternate consciousness that lives under the surface as part of your world, that's kind of judging you, is forced into your experience, but doesn't have any direct will. Anyways, I always thought that was an interesting thing to think about. Obviously, you know, we're just like a weird matter machine. Nothing makes any sense. We're just along for the ride. So I guess I should try to enjoy that. There's some fun words that I had to look up. So the first word was inmundane. I looked this up, didn't find it in the dictionary. An AI said that it doesn't exist, but I don't really trust an AI. But so I thought it was kind of funny. You know, H.P. Lovecraft made up a word, or at least I couldn't find any other reference to it. But I guess it would mean not mundane, kind of like extraordinary means not ordinary, outside of the ordinary. In mundane would be outside of this world, because mundane just means of this world. So next up we have ululate. It's a hard one to say, ululate. And so it means to howl. It's related to the Spanish word aullar, and it just comes from Latin. He just wanted to use a fancy Latin word. He didn't actually use ululate, he used ululation. I can't pronounce that, sorry. So that would be like a howling. We also have jail. It just means jail, but I thought it was spelled really weird. So it's like Gaol. Apparently this is like an outdated British spelling. I don't know why he uses a lot of British spellings. I guess he read a lot of British literature and decided he used the spellings, or yeah, I don't know what's up with that. So this is a really fun one, alienist. And apparently this was like an old-timey psychologist. And so apparently there was a French word like alien, which went like crazy, and came from the sense of insane, or other, or alien. And alien, of course, just means other. So to be other is to be crazy, and then to study the others, you know, to be studying insanity. And it just has this really, you know, weird connection with extraterrestrials, you know, people from outside of the Earth because they are other. So insane, extraterrestrial, they're both kind of other, and then we use similar words in this weird kind of etymological connection for both. Finally, we have supernal, which comes from super, above. It means related to the heavens. Don't get caught up in the cosmological angst of being a trapped soul waiting to get out to fight, some existential war of the universe or of existence itself. You can just talk about another H.P. Lovecraft story. The last one, which you can watch over here, is Polaris, which is another really interesting story about dreams. It's cool, it's a fun time. But don't forget to drop me a like before you go, and good night, good day, good potato. Gotta make sure I get the sound in there.